curb this crisis, understanding exactly where we are tonight is crucial as well. So let's bring this into our everyday lives with the new climate war, the fight to take back our planet. The author of that book, Professor Michael Mann, noted climatologist, joins us now. Michael, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Aside from the temperature, which is the most obvious thing that all of us can track day in, day out, month to month, help us understand how the world has maybe already changed in some ways. Could we begin with water?
Well, sure. There's no way in which our world hasn't now been profoundly impacted by climate change. That's where we are now. We're seeing the impacts play out in real time, whether it's temperature, water, or anything else. And when it comes to water, often we have too little of it now. Out in the western U.S., the drought, the heat has combined to give us those unprecedented wildfires that we've seen in recent summers, including this last summer. All of the largest and most damaging wildfires in California history have happened within the last several years. And at the same time, back east where I live, we've had too much water at times. Philadelphia, New York City, our cities were flooded by the remnants of Hurricane Ida. And that storm packed a bigger punch in terms of the amount of moisture that was in the atmosphere because of the warming of the oceans. There was more moisture, and when it made its way east, it dumped out all that moisture in the form of record flooding. So, whether it's, places that have too little water or places that have too much water now, that's what we're seeing when it comes to the impacts of climate change.
How about vegetation, agriculture, because we need food?
Extreme weather events that can often damage crops, and they can also disrupt supply chains. It makes it more difficult for us to move food around from where it's produced to where it's needed. And that's true here in the United States, but it's true writ large around the planet. So there are lots of ways, some obvious, some more subtle, that climate change is impacting things like food availability.
Food and government instability, those can go hand in hand, lead to maybe unrest or people crossing borders, maybe wars coming. What actually has changed with people?
If you talk to leaders in the Navy, the armed forces here in the United States, they'll tell you that climate change is probably the greatest threat that we face in the years ahead, because it's what they call a threat multiplier. It takes those existing tensions over the competition for resources, whether it's food, which we've talked about, or water resources, which we've talked about, or land, how much land is available. The tropics will become too hot. Sea level rise will flood many of our large coastal, our largest coastal settlements. And so, this is, again, what they call a threat multiplier. It takes that existing tension, that existing competition, and it exacerbates it. And when you exacerbate competition, you get unrest, you get conflict. And we've seen this, for example, in the Middle and Near East. In Syria, the Syrian uprising was a consequence of an epic drought, the worst drought in at least 900 years, that forced rural farmers into the cities where they were competing, again, for those resources with the people already there. That created an atmosphere where terrorist organizations were able to recruit. And that's where ISIS formed. And so we have to realize that, sometimes it's presented as a choice. Well, we've got to do something about climate change, or we've got to do something about national security. They're inseparable. They're very much coupled.
How much of this, Michael, is inevitable? Because they can have the greatest intentions in the world in Glasgow right now, but I guess I can't help but wonder, are we speeding down the hill? That we might be at 1.5 degrees right now, but the inertia is such that we are going to hit 2.7 no matter what.
If we really come to believe that we have no agency, that there's nothing we can do about this problem, well, it potentially leads us down the same path of inaction as outright denial. And the forces of inaction, they recognize that. And so sometimes they actually fan the flames of doomism to convince us it's too late. And here's where the science actually presents some somewhat good news. Make no mistake, many of the impacts that we've talked about are sort of baked in now. We're going to have to deal with this for perpetuity, but we can prevent it from getting worse. We now understand that if we bring our carbon emissions down to zero, the planet stops warming up. We used to think that there were decades of additional warming that would be in the pipeline. But we now better understand how, for example, the oceans draw down the carbon dioxide. They pull it out of the atmosphere, and they bring those CO2 levels down after we stop burning fossil fuels. And that's really where this understanding has come from, that if we can reduce our carbon emissions by 50% within the next decade, and that's what we're talking about right now at COP26 in Glasgow. All eyes are on, the commitments from the leading countries of the world to see if we can arrive at a global agreement to ramp down those carbon emissions, again, 50% within the next decade. Because if we can do that, we prevent the warming. We prevent the planet from warming beyond a truly catastrophic 3 degrees Fahrenheit. We keep the warming within our adaptive capacity, something that we can deal with if we act now.
Professor Michael Mann, with the new climate war, the fight to take back our planet, thank you.
Thank you.